Around Democratic member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut. We have been talking about the fact that this may be a Jeanine Pirro special where the grand jury looks at this and goes,
forget it.
Wait, are you kidding me?
Forget it.
We've got the Truth Social post where he's saying, go after these people.
Yes.
Like, this is selective prosecution. I guess the question is, will this new U.S. attorney dare bring a case that has no future?
Well, I think we have to understand what the underlying point is here. Yes, Donald Trump probably wants his enemies in jail, but
Right.
What he also wants is to harass his enemies to the point where a lot of people decide to just stand down.
So even if it's tossed out by a grand jury or a judge throws it out, mission accomplished. Just like the New York Times case got thrown out, he's harassed.
Yeah, it's massively expensive to go through this if you're James Comey or Letitia James, and he sees what's happening in the corporate community already. Folks just deciding to sit on the sidelines. A similar thing is happening with Democratic donors. A lot of folks who used to play in politics have decided to just step back because they don't want to be in Trump's crosshairs. So the point here, sure, is to get a few of his political adversaries in jail, but the real point is a tried and true tactic of despots all over the country, all over the world, which is to just harass and intimidate their political opposition so that people decide to stay indoors, protesters don't show up, candidates don't run. That's how democracies die.
Yeah, let's talk about local stations being owned by these sort of right-wing conglomerates. We've known Sinclair for a while. Has been actually ordering at times their anchors to say certain things. I actually knew a few who told me they had to read something and were ordered to read it from Sinclair. And so it suddenly starts sounding, kind of like what Anne Applebaum was warning about a few years ago regarding Hungary. We were talking earlier, George Packer. This isn't Nazi Germany. This isn't Mussolini's Italy. But it certainly sounds like we're moving toward, the president wants us to move towards Orban's Hungary.
Right. So I don't think there's a future where we don't have elections. Right. What happens in Hungary and Turkey and Serbia is that the space for political dissent is just contracted to such an extent that the opposition can never win at a national level. In a place like Turkey, the opposition to Erdogan can win a mayor's race, but they're never going to actually take control of the parliament. And that's what he's trying to engineer here. On the media space, this is an extraordinary moment because at the same time that you're seeing companies like Nexstar and Sinclair try to control political dialogue and take down Trump critics, you're talking about some new massive consolidation happening as well. The purchase of Paramount, which includes CBS, and the possible purchase by that same company, backed by the Ellison family, good friends of Donald Trump, of CNN. So you have a world in which you may have allies of the president.
Well, and the Murdochs with TikTok.
Running TikTok, running CBS, running CNN, showing already that they're willing to fire people who are critical of Donald Trump. That's a really dangerous space for the country to be in. And again, tried and true tactic. These despots take control of the media space. They reward the folks that run the media companies with big, lavish paydays. And in exchange, criticism is not eliminated, but it is just turned down so that the political opposition really never has a shot to win a major election. So we're not there yet, but that's the direction that we're heading.
What's the remedy to that then, Senator? That sounds like monopolies. That sounds like a very small number of very wealthy Americans who call President Trump a friend, controlling what we see and hear every day. What's the remedy?
So there's two remedies. One remedy is for the people to just show that they won't be silenced. So we've got some very big protests coming up in the middle of October. That'll be an important moment for the people of this country to show that every time that Trump tries to ratchet down free speech, the protests get bigger. But the second remedy is for the Democratic Party to make clear that if you give us power, we are going to break up these corporate monopolies, and in particular these media monopolies. And I will say for a long time, the Democratic Party was often just as friendly as the Republican Party was to this consolidation of economic power in the financial services space, the banking space, or in the media space. So if we want to be credible as a critic of Trump's slide to totalitarianism, then we have to explain how we are going to put, local communities back in charge of their news.
Senator, you're obviously on the Foreign Relations Committee. Let's turn you to Ukraine. We heard really different rhetoric from President Trump earlier this week about Ukraine's ability to potentially reclaim the land it has since lost to Russia. There's been some speculation among Europeans, though, and David Sanger has a piece in the Times this morning suggesting that they feel like this is actually, though they're grateful for the words, that this is Trump looking for a way out. That as long as the weapons still can be sold to NATO, that's good, but that it's Trump disengaging the United States, particularly from the peace process.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at what he said at the UN, it was very careful, right? He said he thinks Ukraine can win with Europe's help, not with the help of the United States. But I also think his Ukraine policy is just who is in the room last. So what he said, here in New York was helpful and positive for Ukraine. But next week he'll be attacking Zelensky as a corrupt dictator. The real bottom line here is that he hasn't actually done anything to help Ukraine. Ukraine is going to run out of money and weapons at the end of this year. He's refusing to put a new funding package before Congress. There's a sanctions bill that enjoys Republican and Democratic support that would start to ratchet pressure up on Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump alone is blocking that bill from consideration in the United States Senate. So I guess it was good for Ukraine what he said this week, but he'll say something hurtful and harmful next week, and you got to actually put some action where the words are, and we just haven't seen that.